I'm going to show you how to create an assembly for your pegboard in Autodesk Inventor. Completed file looks like, and if you look at it from the front view, you can see that the 3 pins are set so that they are slightly different to each other. If we have a look at the file, the 4th page shows you that they each have a distance of 10, 20 and 30. File, you need to select File, New, and we're going to do a standard millimeter assembly file, so double click on this one, place the first component, navigate to the folder where you've stored all your files, and we'll start with the shelf. When you bring the shelf in, it will be in the right angle to start the file. 1 click will give you a preview, 2 clicks will open the file. So Inventor assumes you want another one, so right click and say OK, because we only want one file. You'll note here in the browser that this first component that's been brought in has been grounded, which means it will stay fixed in place and the other components will move up to it. There are 2 ways of doing that. One way is to go right click on the component once you've brought it in and just select grounded. But the better way to do it is to actually make a change in the settings. So if you go into Tools, Application Options, select the Assembly tab along the top and check this box here so that it says Place and Ground First Component at the Origin. Click Apply and then Close. Now doing that once you've started an assembly will not change the current assembly, but it will change any future files. So what we'll do next is come back to the Assembly tab on the top ribbon, and we're going to place the next component, which will be the side. Now when we bring the side in, it won't be aligned the way that we want it to. So we're going to rotate it before we place it. So if I open that file, what I want to do is I want to flip this piece of material on the Z axis. So if I right click, and then I'm going to rotate it along the Y axis to flip it and make it stand upright. So if I go it that way, there is our first component. Now I want to rotate around the Z axis again, so that's the vertical axis. So Z and one more time, and that brings that around so that it's placed in the right position to join them up. You don't have to do that. I'm a visual learner. I like to see these parts in the correct location, so it's up to you as to what works best. So OK to cancel, and we're ready to join these together. I find that sometimes coming in and changing the way that we view this by going View, Visual Style and selecting Shaded with Edges makes it a little bit easier to see where the components are, especially when we've coloured them. So we're now going back to the Assemble tab, and we're going to use the Constrain menu. There are 2 options that we're working with at the moment, and we're going to use the Mate and the Flush constraint. So either of these will work for specific purposes. So we're going to start with the Mate constraint. So I'm going to come in and select that surface on the inside of that trench. And then I will press my Shift button and my Center mouse button and rotate the file around so that I can select the end of the shelf. To complete each constraint, you must click on the Apply button. Now whatever I touch next, whatever I click on next, I will begin the next constraint. So sometimes I like to cancel out, reposition my views, and then come back into the constrain option. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it makes it easier. I'm now just going to flush these 2 components. I'm going to flush that surface and the front surface of the shelf. Now notice that the side was the one that was moving, because remember this one is grounded. Must say apply. Alright, now if I move this, I can only drag it up and down. So we have flushed the front surfaces, we have leveled the inside of that housing joint, so I cannot drag that piece away. So I'm going to reposition this part before I start the constraining so that I can access the inside of the trench. I'll come back into the constrain and I'm going to select mate on that surface, and then I'm going to rotate the model around again to select the underside of the shelf. Press apply, put that back, close that one here. Now I cannot move that part around. That is actually fixed now and it's fully constrained. If I want to check the constraining, I can open or expand both of these parts. So there are three mates. There's the inside, there's the flush on that front surfaces, and then there's the mate constraint on the bottom of that trench edge. So if I rotate this model around, we can do the same thing on this back part here on this other side. So constrain, mate, rotate, mate, apply. Reset the view. I'm going to flush the front and there, apply. Doesn't matter which order I do that in. Again, I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to move this so I can view back into constraint, and I'm going to mate that edge and the underside of that shelf. Apply, close. Alright, so just to double check, nothing can be moved, and those three components are ready to go. So I'm now going to bring in the little pins. So again, place. I'm going to bring in, I can bring them all in at once if I like, so I can select all three of them, and then I'll have to rotate them individually if necessary. So I'll pop those ones there, right click OK, alright, and I can move the component around so that I can see them. If you wish to rotate the part around so that it's aligned approximately in the right spot, you can change by doing the free rotate. Right click OK. Alright, so to assemble this little pin into the round hole, we are going to use the axis of the part and the axis of the hole. We are going to mate the central axis, so if I click on that, it picks up the center axis, and I'm going to click on that curved inside part of the circle and then apply. We'll check that that's worked. I cannot drag that left and right, but I can move it up and down. So to finish off this one, remember this one is 10 millimeters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a flush constraint from the top of the peg to the top of the shelf, which sets it at 0 over here. And so we're going to change the offset. If I type in 10, the pin will actually move in a negative direction. So watch what happens. I've typed 10 and it's moved downwards. So all I'm going to do is put a negative to change the direction. Click apply, cancel that, and you can see that that little pin is set now in there. Now I cannot move that pin, and this is one of the things I will do when I assess your work. I'll open up your assembly and make sure that everything is fully constrained. Alright, so let's reset this. I'll do the square one next. So I'll bring the square peg in closer. Constrain, we'll use the mate constraint. I'm going to select that flat surface, and then I'll rotate that around to select the corresponding surface. Apply. I'll select this surface and come in to select, I can just catch that one, then apply. Let's check if that worked. Nope, it did not. Alright, let's have a look at that. Can I move that? Alright, so that's the square peg. So let's have a look at what I've done. I've done a mate constraint, and then I picked up the edge by mistake, so I'm going to delete that one. So by expanding this part, I can see the constraints. I'm just going to delete that one. Alright, let's bring that around. We'll free rotate it again to make it correct. And I will just confirm. So that edge is the one that's there. And if I wanted to, I could delete that and start again. But that's the one I want to use. So in this case, I'm going to mate that surface there with this one. I think I've selected the correct one. Let's have a look. Alright, that's right. So that can slide in and out of the square hole, and then again we will flush it, and this one's 30 from the top, so I will go flush. Let's try mate. Let's see if the mate one will work on this one. If I select the top one and I select the top of the shelf and go apply, we'll get this. Alright, so let's use the flush constraint, which is the correct one. So flush the top to the top of the shelf. We'll put our minus 30, and then apply. And we can check to make sure, and that part is definitely working. Now when we do this triangle, if we have a look at it from the top, you can see the triangles like this. So I would always like to just rotate that part around. Which one am I going to select? Is it this one? Hold on, how am I going to do that? I'm going to rotate it that way. That's what I want to do, like that. You don't have to do the rotation. I just prefer to do it. Alright, so we are going to mate this flat surface with, rotate the model around, we're going to rotate it to click on that one, apply. Let's come back and have a little look at it. Alright, now what I want to do on this one is I want to, let me just get that in a position where I can see it a bit nicer. I want to select this edge. So where that corner of the two triangles meet, I'm going to select that edge, and then I'm going to select the edge of this triangle here. So we're going to mate those together. So this edge, not a surface, rotate it around, come on in so that we can see what's happening, and I'm going to select that edge there, make sure it's definitely got the edge, and go apply, check that, and oops, close the cancel. Sorry. Now check to see if I can move that. Yes, I can move it in and out of the triangular hole, but I cannot drag it out completely. So last of all, we're going to flush the top of the triangle with the top of the shelf. This time we're going to make it minus 20, and enter does the same thing as apply. Oh, here we go. One last check. Cannot move any of the parts. Everything is fully locked. Check in the isometric view, and that's what it looks like. One thing I will show you before I finish is if the model is looking in a different angle, let's say it's upside down, you can manipulate the view cube so that you can turn your model around, look at it from the correct angle. So you can see I've got the circle on the wrong side, so I'm going to rotate that around, and that's the view I want it to be. Now every time I move now and come back to hit the reset or the little house button, it will go back to my upside down view. So once I've placed the view at the angle that I wish to view it, you can come in here and go right click, set current view as home, and I would go fit to view. So that way every time I rotate, if I just come back and click on the house, it will always return to what I want my home view to be. And that's how you create your pegboard assembly.